2017 was a make it or break it year for Nintendo. With the disappointing sales of the Wii U, they really needed to create something special with the Switch. The reveal event last year had some really sweet trailers, but the hardware itself had a lot of people worried about another Wii U fiasco. Then the Switch launch lineup was released, and I think that's what really drove every Nintendo fan's anxiety into high gear. There wasn't a whole lot of third-party games releasing at the time of the Switch, and there was really only one substantial first-party title. That game may have been a Zelda title, but that was also on the Wii U. There was very little in exclusivity for the Switch other than like 1-2 Switch. But now with 2017 coming to a close, the Switch's lineup has been all like, boom, and there's a ton of really cool games that have come out, and third-party support from AAA developers and indie developers alike have been extremely strong. So today we're going to take a bit of a look back and see what Nintendo did right this year. And the things they did that weren't so right. The Switch was announced at the price point of $299, which was more than the base model of both the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One at the time. Didn't include a game, and the prices for extra controllers and accessories was, and still is, astronomical. The Switch seemed to be on a steady course to failure. Despite the fears of myself and many, I was a sheep and picked up the Switch on day one, so I was able to avoid the disaster that was trying to snag a Switch from like March to June. But even so, during that time the first couple months on the market were pretty dry as far as the selection went. After I finished Breath of the Wild, I was forced to look inward and think, why did I buy this? But then a bunch of good stuff started coming onto the market, like ARMS, then Splatoon 2, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, and since then we've gotten a rad exclusive every single month on the Switch. If you've bought Nintendo consoles in the past, you'd know that most if not all of the good games come from Nintendo themselves, but the Switch has actually shown a lot of really nice potential when it comes to third-party support this time around. I don't think anybody expected Doom and Wolfenstein 2 to be coming to the Switch, but here we are. Bethesda has come aboard the SS Switch Full Sail, and so far Skyrim and Doom seem to be performing really well on the console. Along with Bethesda, we've seen support from Capcom, Sega, Telltale, and tons of indie developers. Like seriously, indie games are making a great home on the Switch. Stardew Valley has been doing really well on the Switch side. The Treasure Trove for Shovel Knight, Super Meat Boy Forever, Flipping Death, and a lot more are either Switch exclusive or Switch launch exclusive. Most of these indie titles have a similar look and feel to Nintendo games, and honestly I'd prefer playing them on the Switch if I had the choice to. I'm happy to see so many developers jumping on board, and I think it's a good indicator of a healthy lineup for many years to come. Not everything is great on the Switch though. While we haven't had much time to gauge how multiplayer works yet on the console, using an app for voice chat this late in the game is absurd. Playing with your friends on Splatoon 2 is a challenge, talking to your friends is a challenge, goddamn friend codes are still around and that's a challenge. Nintendo may be moving forward, but their lack of understanding when it comes to online functionality is still a really glaring flaw in their systems. Online obstacles aside, I feel like the Switch is everything that we could have wanted from Nintendo's next console. While there's nothing special in terms of power, the Switch blends console and handheld leagues better than the Wii U did. I'm glad to say that the Switch is on the better side of history, and has the foundation of a healthy life as a console. Nintendo's E3 this year wasn't anything too crazy. While we got some pretty great announcements like Metroid Prime 4, a new Pokemon title for the Switch, that's all they really were, just announcements. There were some tech demos / trailers for a new Kirby and also a new Yoshi game, but they didn't really have that much done yet. Don't get me wrong, I love both of these series and I'm glad to see that they'll be getting new entries soon on the Switch, but I wish we would have had seen a little bit more, or like get a title or something. The Super Mario Odyssey footage really saved this conference though. Nintendo's conference was only about 25 minutes long, and a solid chunk of that was used to show off Super Mario Odyssey. While much of the time beforehand was just spent showing ideas or killing time with buzzwords and announcements and all that, it was nice to see a fair amount of gameplay in the Odyssey trailer at the end. Overall, wasn't their best conference, wasn't their worst, it announced some games and got the job done. I mean, what more could you want? There's actually not a whole lot to say about Amiibo this year. It's been the lightest year for Amiibo that we've seen since they were first introduced, and I think the craze has kind of ended for them, so the stocking issues are much less apparent than before. While there's still some tough ones to find, like the Samus Returns Amiibo or the recent Breath of the Wild Hero Amiibos, it feels like these are being talked about less and less. Luckily, that means Amiibo haven't really been at the forefront of much controversy. Some have complaints that these guys are, physical DLC and locking certain stuff behind a paywall in a sense, but I don't know. I never bought them for the sake of their in-game features, I just think it's cool to get some cheap, high-quality figures for characters that normally wouldn't get any attention. It doesn't really seem like Amiibo are going anywhere. I mean, they still sell decently enough, and they've got somewhat like a cult following online, so I imagine things will be okay for them in the future. Maybe all the other things going on for Nintendo this year just kind of outshined any news for Amiibo. Last year was the first time that a Nintendo IP made a big entry, or really any entry, on the mobile marketplace. Some Pokemon puzzle games showed up in the past, but that wasn't really anything groundbreaking. Pokemon Go was a monumental event for pretty much the entire world last year, but now it's just kinda dead. But that aside, we got Super Mario Run at the end of last year, Fire Emblem Heroes at the start of this one, and just recently Animal Crossing Pocket Camp. These games have all been pretty successful as far as I can tell, and seem to uphold the original IP very well. Super Mario Run looks and plays like a 2D Mario title, Fire Emblem Heroes plays almost exactly like the handheld Fire Emblem games, and has somehow amassed a crazy cult following online. And Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, despite being a little bit more grindy than the grindfest it comes from, is a very solid mobile experience. It's nice to see Nintendo loosen their iron grip on their IPs to allow some room to grow. No doubt the appearance of these different series on the mobile marketplace has brought in some extra profits for Nintendo, while inviting some older or even new fans back to their franchises. After the NES Classic's absolutely pitiful stock, the SNES Classic seemed to be following in similar footsteps. Pre-orders were being cancelled left and right, stores were selling out online in a matter of minutes, everything just seemed to be the NES all over again. However, as luck would have it, yeah, it's pretty much just the NES all over again. Okay, that may not be entirely true. There have been many more restocks of the SNES Classic than the NES ever saw, and the SNES is at least 3 times easier to get a hold of, though that's not really saying much. I live in kind of a small town, so getting a hold of a SNES Classic is actually pretty easy at this point. Our stores are getting about the same size shipments that the big cities are getting, so in a lot of places you can kind of just snag one off the shelf for the first couple days after they come in. Though that's not the situation everywhere, it's definitely a sign that Nintendo is at least trying to make a difference. I've watched Craigslist ads for SNES Classic steadily drop down to $100, so it's not much more than you'd spend picking one up in a store. While it's not a picture-perfect scenario, Nintendo has improved from last year's fiasco, and it's showing this time around. And hey, the NES Classic is getting a second run next summer, so maybe this is a sign that Nintendo isn't going to try and totally jerk our chains around with more artificial shortages. But probably not. Truth be told, this was a pretty terrible year for the company. Just kidding, 2017 has been one of the best years for Nintendo in recent memory, aside from some really terrible online infrastructures and... I think this year has really rejuvenated the public's view on Nintendo as a whole. With the successful launch of the Switch, 3DS sales still going strong, and a killer lineup on both consoles, it seems like Nintendo has planted the seeds for a very successful future. We've seen them broaden their horizons through a partnership with Ubisoft on Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, branch out to the mobile marketplaces, and create a very innovative and very solid console. Hopefully Nintendo will use what they've learned this year and just keep on getting better. Or they could screw up and just make another Wii U, I don't know. Hey, thanks for watching the video. This was my first attempt at something like this, so let me know what you thought in the comments. Any sort of feedback will help me better these videos in the future. I hope you enjoyed and have a great rest of your day. Goodbye!